Hi, I'm Daphne Halderman. I'm a Kansas City-based flight attendant on temporary assignment as a flight attendant interviewer. During the next several months, I'll be helping in the selection of our new hire flight attendants. Each year around this time, we begin to select flight attendants, and this year we plan on hiring about 560. Do you remember your interview? I sure remember mine. It took place in Chicago about 7.5 years ago. My interviewer's name was Faye Woodholm, and I can tell you exactly what I was wearing. I remember being very nervous and wondering, what in the world are they looking for? And now I'm asked that very same question by our 1979 applicants. Believe it or not, the answer hasn't changed over the years. As an example, when your interviewer hired you, it was because you were attractive and well-groomed, had a pleasing personality, displayed good judgment, common sense, and the ability to be flexible. Your communication skills were excellent, and you appeared to be the type of person who would get along with all types of people. And though you demonstrated a unique and individual personality, you also demonstrated a willingness to conform to TWA policy and procedures. Finally, you appeared to be sensitive to the needs of others and to do your best work when serving others. As you can see, the characteristics your interviewers saw in you are as important today as they were when you were hired. To find the right person, the Inflight Services Personnel Selection Department uses a really interesting and thorough three-step process. Before I walk you through that three-step process, let me first go over a few facts with you. Applications for the flight attendant position are currently being accepted and will continue to be accepted until around February or March. If you know of anyone who meets the requirements who would like an application, tell them they may request one from Director of Admissions, Post Office Box 408, Overland Park, Kansas 66201. In case you're unfamiliar with the minimum qualifications, here they are. 18 years old, high school graduate or equivalent, U.S. citizen or possess a permanent resident visa. Vision can be no worse than 2200 and must be corrected to 20/50 or better. Health must be excellent, must be willing to relocate, must be between 5'2" and 6'2" with proportionate weight. And preference will be given to applicants who meet the minimum qualifications and who are fluent in Greek, Italian, and Portuguese. Here's the address once again where applications may be requested. Director of Admissions, Post Office Box 408, Overland Park, Kansas 66201. Now let's take a look at that three-step process I mentioned earlier. The first step is an informational meeting. About 25 applicants are invited, and the interviewer gives a presentation about the flight attendant job and TWA. Presently, these meetings are being conducted in major cities throughout the United States. To give you an insight into the competitiveness of the job, last year's figures indicate that about 1/3 of the applicants were sent on to the next step, which is the preliminary interview. This interview is conducted by a flight attendant supervisor on temporary assignment as an interviewer. There are usually 6 to 8 applicants and 1 interviewer involved at this interview. At this point of the process, the interviewer questions the applicant in a way that will give some insight into whether or not the applicant possesses the qualities and characteristics I mentioned earlier. Believe it or not, at this point too, the standards remain high, the competition stiff, and statistically speaking, less than 50% of these applicants are referred to the final interview. Finally comes the third and last step, the final interview. All final interviews are conducted at Breach Academy by a panel of 3 interviewers. 1 from personnel, 1 from training, and 1 from the domicile. This interview involves a 2-day stay in Kansas City, so the applicant gets a real good feel for what TWA and the job is all about. You'll probably find it interesting to hear that the majority of the applicants who attend this interview are ultimately hired. Even though our process is known to be lengthy and thorough, it does not discourage applicants from applying. Last year, over 14,000 applicants were seen to fill only 550 vacancies. This year's figures will probably be very similar. When I meet today's applicants and see their desire for the job and learn of the time they've put into preparing for it, it makes me feel very proud of the career I've chosen. Now that you know how the interviewing process is conducted, here's some information that might be of use to you. In-flight services personnel selection doesn't discourage referrals or recommendations, but please take a good look at the person you're recommending and try to be as objective as possible. This can be especially hard if you're recommending a close friend or relative. Just try and look at them through the eyes of a passenger, and you know how critical passengers are. If you do decide to write a letter of recommendation, give it to the applicant to attach to their application before they send it in. Due to the volume of paperwork that comes in daily, it would be virtually impossible to match the letter with the application before the meeting is scheduled. Anyone submitting an application at this time would be scheduled for a meeting within the next few months. Once again, here's the address to request an application. Director of Admissions, Post Office Box 408, Overland Park, Kansas 66201. If you have any questions about this information or anything else pertaining to our 1979 hiring plan, please feel free to contact your supervisor or the In-Flight Services Personnel Selection Department at Breach Training Academy. Thank you.